Monday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope your afternoon is going well. Thanks for joining us. Browns wrapped up the draft. No first-round pick. Then in the second round, they selected defensive tackle Michael Hall from Ohio State. Third round, a guard from Michigan, Zach Zinter. General Manager Andrew Berry talked about what they saw in those first two picks that they made.
Just quickly what appealed to us about both players, with Mike, he's really tailor-made for our attack front. He's explosive, he's quick, he can rush the passer, he's long, and he plays really with a very high motor. He's really the quintessential three technique in our defense. And for us, pass rushers will always come at a premium, especially those that can affect the pocket from inside. And we think that that's something that Mike will be able to do along our front. So we're really excited to kind of keep him home, so to speak, and think his skill set and passion really matches perfectly for our organization. And then with Zach, I think you guys all know that we'll be a team that invests in the trenches, invests in the O-line. Zach we just thought was a rock solid all-around player his entire career at Michigan. He was really part of the heartbeat of their culture. When we met with him throughout the pre-draft process, very smart, professional, passionate about football, and I think his blue-collar mentality will really fit well within our offensive line room. So we're very excited to add both guys to the team tonight.
Let's welcome in Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram as well as BrownsZone.com. Scott, they're not sexy picks, but you certainly understand. You understand them if you were paying attention to what Andrew Berry had said.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, you don't have a first-round pick, right? You don't draft till 54. Your roster's pretty set. I don't know if there was a blockbuster move for the Browns to make, so they didn't. No trades. Sit at all 6 spots, get 3 interior linemen, 2 on defense, 1 on offense, a corner, receiver, and a linebacker. I think they got younger, which happens in the draft, right? But that's what they needed to do on a D tackle and a guard. And that's certainly what those first 2 picks accomplished.
Yeah, there is. When you look at the, Teller and Bitonio are getting up there in age, and all of their defensive tackles minus Siaka Ika from last year are late 20s, early 30s, so certainly understandable. I know you wrote an article about this. Ironically, Hall is the guy that fell on Zach Zinter's leg and broke it in the Ohio State-Michigan game. But you got an Ohio State guy, you got a Michigan guy, kind of rivals, and take us through that article that you wrote about those two.
Yeah, the Ohio State-Michigan thing is probably more meaningful than the broken leg just because there's genuine animosity, right, between those teams, and they're playing for Big Ten championship. And one of them said, I think it was Mike Hall, said, we thought the winner of our game was going to win the national championship. Michigan beats Ohio State, goes on to win the national championship last year. So, they called themselves college enemies, and they faced it off against each other. They went one-on-one, a handful of times, probably over the couple of years. But then to put the kind of twist on it is Hall gets blocked into Zinter, 2 bones in his leg break. He misses the Big Ten championship, misses Michigan's playoff or run to the national championship, and yet they're reunited in Cleveland, teammates, and they said they're brothers. They hung out together Saturday in Berea, did videos, took pictures together. So it's just kind of interesting. You go Ohio State, Michigan, and then for a while Zach Zinter didn't know if that was going to affect his NFL career. The injury to the leg, when it happens, you don't know if there's ligaments involved. He said it was the best, worst case scenario because it wound up only being broken bones. But it's still a pretty nasty injury that kind of shapes who he is.
Yeah, and again, that probably cost him certainly a round. Maybe it's hard to say 2 rounds because I can't imagine guards going in the first round. But he would have gone higher than the 3rd round. He was that well thought of as an offensive lineman.
Yeah, that's probably true. He started working out just before the draft, so he sent kind of personal workout videos to teams. But anytime there's an injury and there's uncertainty, it scares some teams. So that's probably true. He's a guy that the Browns like. They really like his pass protection. He's a big dude. And he gets to sit behind, theoretically, assuming nobody gets hurt, gets to sit behind Bitonio Teller, Ethan Postic at center. and learned from three, kind of grizzled veterans.
All right, let's take a look at the entire draft class. You kind of ran through them just by position. So it's Hall at 54, Zinter in the 3rd round, no 4th round pick, Jamari Thrash, wide receiver from Louisville in the 5th. Then they go linebacker, Watson from Mississippi State in the 6th, Miles Harden, cornerback from South Dakota, and Juwan Briggs, defensive tackle from Cincinnati. Which of those picks made the most sense to you, and were there any that you were kind of that were head scratchers? It's kind of hard to quabble when you're talking about 6th and 7th round picks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's lame to go with Hall is the one that made the most sense, but we've talked about it heading into the draft, Dave. D tackle was one of those positions that I thought was at the top of the list of 2nd round options. And they didn't need to chase needs, but it just made sense. It's an important position. It's probably gaining importance in the league, especially from a pass rush perspective. And we heard many Browns executives and personnel people talk about that this weekend. Like we mentioned, they were older there. They felt like they needed to get younger. They had enough, I think they have enough depth there, but could they use one more quality young guy to pair with Siaki Ika? And Hall's a different body type, different type of player than Ika. So I just thought that made sense. And then Hall was kind of there's a run on defensive tackles, a run on those type of defensive tackles, and the Browns didn't want to let Hall get away, so they grabbed him there at number 54. And then I didn't think there were really any head scratchers. If you want to go to the last pick, Juwan Briggs, you double up at D tackle. You could argue you could have gone somewhere else, but in the 7th round, they like the kid. He's similar where they think he can pass rush, can be disruptive in the middle. So I think it's hard to kind of quibble with any of them.
All right, when you look at the thing as a whole, and again, I know you wrote an article about this, what do you think the draft says about the Browns roster and kind of where they're at? What can you draw conclusion-wise from that?
Yeah, I mean, we knew they had a good roster heading into the draft, right? So I think this just reinforced it. And to me, what stood out was, you look at around the league and they talk about, okay, this guy can come in and contribute right away. And how does that help him in 2024? I don't know if you can make that jump with any of these guys. To me, it's more about 2025, 2026, because, Hall could get a chance to start this year. I certainly would not put him at the top of the depth chart right now. I would think he's in that defensive tackle rotation. But Ika didn't even play until the second year, until the end of last year, because he had guys in front of him. So, so I don't expect him to have a huge impact right away. Zinter, if nobody gets hurt, isn't going to play this year, or at least is not going to start this year. Thrash is going to get into a competition at receiver. Maybe Nathaniel Watson contributes on special teams. He's a bigger bodied linebacker. Maybe he can find himself onto the field on defense in certain situations. But my point is, it's about down the road. It's, okay, how do we get younger at guard? How do we get younger at D tackle? How do we get bigger and younger at linebacker, right? So it's about 2025 and beyond. And I think you can tie that into, the Deshaun Watson trade effectively, in my opinion, ended this weekend, right? The Texans made the last of those 6 picks that the Browns sent. Houston sent 1 back, and that was involved in the Jerry Jeudy trade. They used that pick as part of the package to get Jerry Jeudy. So you can kind of close the book on that and look forward to finally another number 1 pick next year. I think the Browns are scheduled to have 8 picks. So again, that's looking forward, just like a lot of these draft picks.
Yeah, we'll talk about that trade a little bit later in the show. The question you surprised at all they didn't take a running back in that 5th, 6th round area, or? Yeah,
a little bit. I thought running back. I thought tight end. Right, we talked about it. The number 2 tight end. I think there's a hole there. Which to flash back to that Watson trade, they took Cade Stover out of Ohio State with that number 123 in the 4th round. I thought Stover would have been a good fit here. So, I thought they could have gone running back. I thought they could have gone tight end. There's a lot of buzz about offensive tackle heading into the draft. They didn't address that position. To me, if they had taken a running back high, we're talking 3rd, 4th, 5th round, there would have been a lot of questions about Nick Chubb. And, maybe the Browns just don't want to answer that right now and want to give Chubb as much time as possible to get back to who he was, to see if he can be ready week 1 or week 4, whenever that is, and then adjust accordingly, as opposed to spending a valuable pick on a running back when you still don't know about Chubb's recovery.
Scott Petrek, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as brownzone.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We'll hear more from Andrew Berry about the draft class. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Play Maximum Millions and $2 million Ultimate Cash from the Ohio Lottery, and you may never look at scratch-offs the same way again.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrek, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. You can check out his stuff online, brownzone.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey guys, this team going to the draft had an amazing roster already built by Andrew Berry and his staff. Which of the day 3 players we took in the draft should we be watching the most, who has the best chance to be this year's DeJuan Jones by balling out in camp and in the preseason, possibly even jumping up due to injury? Go Browns!
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Scott, what are your thoughts? I mean, that's... the 4th, 5th, 6th, well, there is no 4th. So 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds.
Yeah, I would go back to Nathaniel Watson. I think he gives them a size element that they don't have a ton of. Really productive. I think he was a 6th-year senior, so obviously has a lot of experience. Led the SEC in tackles, tied for the lead in sacks. He was SEC Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, that's a pretty good resume. Right here, it's a really good resume. It's a tough conference. So, we talk about linebackers. They have JOK. They signed Jordan Hicks. They took a flyer on Devin Bush. Watson could fit in there, and, could he be the strong side guy in the base defense? I don't think that's crazy to think. Maybe not week 1, but at some point, I would fully expect him to play on special teams right away. So he would be my choice for that.
All right, Andrew Berry talked about what the Browns saw in Mississippi State linebacker Nathaniel Watson, the guy they took in that 6th round.
With Nathaniel, so one of the things that we thought a lot about when we lost when we lost Sione in free agency this spring, one of the things that he was able to add when he played both Mike and Sam is a little bit more stoutness in the middle of the defense, particularly at the point of attack. And we think that, Nathaniel, he's got good range, he's incredibly smart, and he has good instincts, but he provides maybe a little bit of a diverse profile in that linebacker room because he does have a little bit more strength and power at the point of attack. So we see him as a player that has the potential to maybe develop into that type of role, Mike, Sam, flex, and ultimately be someone who's a candidate to call the defense after he gets his sea legs out from under him.
So, Scott, they expect a lot of a guy. That if you're saying that about a guy you took in the 6th round, that's pretty high praise.
It is. I thought it was meaningful when Barry talked about Watson potentially calling the plays, right? You don't just say that about any rookie coming in. It means he's got some intelligence. I talked to his high school football coach today, actually, and we went over that. He's really got football smarts. He's got his master's degree. So there's stuff to like there. And, you got to be careful with these comps coming out in the draft. But the Browns obviously saw what I'm doing what Andrew Berry did, what Sione Takitaki was able to do. Right? He started off as a Sam. When Anthony Walker got hurt in 2022, he morphed into the Mike and had success there, a bigger body. So you can kind of just see Watson, hopefully, theoretically, fitting into that role, maybe doing some blitzing, which Takitaki did. We mentioned the 10 sacks that Watson had at Mississippi State.
The other thing is Andrew Berry, you had success at Mississippi State with your cornerback, MJ Emerson. They liked the cornerback that went a little bit earlier from Mississippi State. So I think there's something to the way Mississippi State plays defense that the Browns like.
Yeah, that's interesting. You get those ties. You get guys in the building kind of pulling for people, right? So Emerson with Watson, Denzel Ward, DeJuan Jones, Luke Whippler, I think probably gave testimonials toward Mike Hall Jr., right? We know C.J. Stroud did it in Houston for Cade Stover. So I think that happens if you're comfortable with the college coaching staff. You like how they handle things. You think the guys that come out are prepared. Especially when you're picking that late, I think those kind of things matter.
I would agree wholeheartedly. All right, this from Dogs by Nature. So these are the Browns' undrafted free agents that we know of, and it's a developing list. So Aiden Robbins, running back from Brigham Young. Brown, wide receiver from Carolina, who was opposite Leggett. You got Welsh, tight end from Wyoming. Javion Cohen from Miami was a guy that a lot of people thought would get drafted, another guard. You got Thompson, offensive lineman from Rhode Island. Sundell, offensive tackle from North Dakota State. Then on defense, another linebacker, Reed from Weber State. Edmonds, safety from Arizona State. And Dyshawn Gale, defense back from San Diego State. The one that jumps out to me is Cone. A lot of people had him going, 5th, 6th round of the draft.
Yeah, people like to grade their mock drafts, and I'm not tooting my own horn here, and I don't even know if it counts, but I had the Browns taking him in like the 5th or 6th round, and then they wound up, I guess agreeing to terms to sign him as a undrafted guy. So he had a good profile. When you look at his strengths and weaknesses and you read the scouting reports, he felt like somebody the Browns could be interested in to come in and get younger at that guard spot, just like they did with Zinter. I think there's a spot there, right? I mean, you have Zinter, you have Mike Dunn, and you got Whippler. I think there's still a question mark about Whippler. So, I could certainly see Cohen sticking on the practice squad. And then the rest of the guys, it's all about positions and giving, filling out spots, guys that showed you something along the draft process. Tight end makes sense. Yeah, that receiver room makes sense. Running back, right? It feels like you can always find a running back, unsigned running back, maybe even a tryout guy that catches your eye and sticks around. Whether or not he makes the team, but he stays through out the offseason, stays through training camp, maybe winds up on your practice squad. I think that's a position you always want to target in this area.
The other thing is the last couple of years, and it wasn't this way before that, but you've had undrafted rookie free agents safeties for, D'Anthony Bell, Hickman, McAllister, all kind of stuck.
Yeah, Diabate at linebacker, right?
Yep.
So which is interesting because the roster has felt more and more kind of locked down, right? It's better than it used to be. It feels like there's less openings, but that doesn't mean you can't win a job. You really can, and we saw that last year from the guys you mentioned. So, I probably wouldn't bet on any of these undrafted guys making the 53-man, but you certainly cannot rule it out.
Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram. BrownsZone.com and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll get the breakdown on Miles Harden, 7th round pick from South Dakota, who the Browns drafted. Sports from CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram as well as BrownsZone.com. This is from First Draft with Field Yates, Mel Kiper Jr. A scouting report on Miles Harden from South Dakota, who the Browns took in the 7th round. This was pre-draft.
Miles Harden, a cornerback who's from the Miami area. I don't know how the heck they found him all the way up to South Dakota from Miami. I guess those bigger schools were overlooking him, Mel. I like tough corners, and this kid is tough. 6 interceptions during his college career, 5 forced fumbles, 26 pass breakups, over 140 career tackles from Miles Harden. Excellent ball skills. He was down there at the Shrine Bowl, showed out there as well, showed that he can hang with good competition. We're in a 4.50 at the Combine, Mel, which is just fine, right? That's not going to be the kind of 40 that's going to knock you so far down the boards. I think he goes somewhere on day 3, perhaps as early as round 4. But if he falls in around 6 or 7, the competitiveness, the toughness, the edge that he brings, the ball skills, to me, Miles Harden will be a round 6 or 7 heist.
And Scott, Andrew Berry got that. Now, to let you know, we had that slotted in shows twice last week, and I killed it both times. So shame on me. Shame on me for that. But, it's an independent perspective. That's a unbiased perspective of what the Browns got in round 7. And we know Andrew Berry's pretty good at picking cornerbacks.
Yeah, and I like Field. I think he does a really good job. I know he works hard. Browns have had success at corner, right? Newsome, Emerson. I thought Cameron Mitchell played really well as a rookie last year. I watched some highlights of Harden today. The 4.5, like Field said, it doesn't kill you. It's not blazing speed, right? But it's competitive. He's a bunch of turnovers. He had forced fumbles, interceptions. He's impressive. Now you got to make the jump from the small school to the NFL, right? That's going to be a transition. He probably didn't play guys that can run you by you like Jerry Jeudy and Myles Garrett and Thrash and more. The Browns, according to Barry, they see him as the nickel, maybe even a safety type guy. Put him inside, let him work in there. He's a guy that it's always a position of need, and he's certainly a guy that is intriguing. Yeah,
without question. And again, great room to be learning in if you're coming from a spot like that with who the Browns have in that cornerback room. All right, this is from CBS Sports. Winners and losers from the NFL draft. Loser, Cleveland Browns from the Deshaun Watson trade. So the Texans end up with the following picks as a result of the swap. 2022 first-round pick, 15th overall, Kenyon Green. 2022 fourth-round pick, 107th overall, Dameon Pierce. 2023 first-round pick, 3rd overall. Now, they had to finagle to get that, so they had to trade assets other than that pick to get it. But it turned into Will Anderson. 2023 4th-round pick, 69th overall, Tank Dell. 2024 first-round pick, cornerback Kamari Lassiter and Jamal Hill. 4th-round pick, 78th overall, Kalen Bullock. All right, early returns not great based on that. The one thing I would say, look at what went on at the top of the draft with quarterbacks, and that tells you why the Browns made that trade still and would probably do it knowing all the tribulations they've gone through, I think.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Dave, because, it speaks to like you're getting at, right? You need a quarterback. You need to find them. It's hard to find, so you force guys up the draft board, and you hope it works out. I do think that since the Browns made that trade in March of 22, there's been more veterans available than used to be. Obviously they traded Baker Mayfield, but he was one that became available. Russell Wilson becomes available. Kirk Cousins this year, right? Derek Carr, Justin Fields. It feels like you don't have to rely on the draft as much, but even then, it's a crapshoot. You need money and you need resources. So I certainly understand why the Browns did it. Now, obviously, they're going to be a loser when you compare Deshaun Watson playing 11 games plus a quarter versus that haul that the Texans got, right? Tank Dell was good last year. And that's, that board is a little unfair because they use picks to move up, so it's not like, they would have gotten McDonald or Will Anderson just with the Browns pick. But still, it's part of it. It's all about Deshaun Watson. It's all about if he can take this team and win playoff games, right? And he hasn't done that yet. He hasn't had the chance to do that yet. But that's the only way it swings from this being a lopsided win for the Texans is for Watson not only to win regular season games, but do big things in the playoffs.
Yeah, win the division, win some playoff games, and then we'll see. The other thing, credit Nick Caserio, the local guy. They made very good use of the picks that they got from the Browns.
No, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, I mean, and that's it, right? If you make a trade like that, you better capitalize. And plenty of teams don't, but it certainly looks like the Texans did. Not all those picks were winners, but certainly some were.
All right, this from Dog Pound Daily. Free agents the Browns must target after the NFL draft. They go Donovan Smith, offensive tackle, set to turn 31 in June. Not the player he once was, but Smith would be a strong veteran, signing at this point in the offseason, coming in as insurance. Ross Dwelly, tight end, former 49ers tight end. Dwelly spent the first 6 seasons of his career. Isn't going to be a game changer by any means. Decent hands, can be effective as tight end 3. Quan Alexander, linebacker, in the Pro Bowl, or he once was, but as a reserve still provides value. He's going to help more in coverage and as a rotational rusher, not doing much against the run. Scott, I don't think they need to sign any of those guys. Last thing in the world they need is another 31-year-old offensive tackle.
Yeah. Is he the guy that maybe if somebody got hurt or Conklin's recovery doesn't go as the Browns hoped, you could target? Sure. I could see that. But the Browns have a couple older guys, a couple of veteran tackles to back up, beyond Conklin and Wills and Jones. They added those guys in the offseason for some depth. So, I think we'll have to see how it goes. I don't feel like there's a crazy need. The one about the tight end 3, I think they got a couple tight end 3s. Tight end 2, it feels more to me, but maybe they won't use a lot of tight end 2s, right? Maybe they'll go so much 3 wides that they don't feel they need that spot. I could still see them target somebody maybe a little better than Dwelly, though.
I can't see them. Everybody has, not everybody. I've heard several people mention linebacker. I think people are forgetting about Mahmoud Diabate, the guy that was the undrafted free agent. And now it sounds like they're awfully high on Watson that they drafted. I don't see them needing another linebacker.
No, I'm with you. Heading into the draft even, I wasn't sure. Like, a bunch of people thought they should take a linebacker at 54, which made no sense to me because they really only play 1 or 2 most of the time, right? And that's spoken for with JOK and Jordan Hicks, at least for this year, not down the road. But that's why drafting a guy makes sense. It's, again, looking toward the future. But when you go JOK, Hicks, we'll see what Devin Bush has left in him. Watson, like you mentioned, Diabate, Tony Field is still on the team. Outside of special teams, you're only going to play, 3 of those guys on defense. So I think they're kind of set unless they have like a major injury.
Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as BrownZone.com, and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll continue to look at some of the Browns draft picks and how they're being viewed nationally. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as BrownZone.com. This from ESPN.com. Mel Kiper's draft grades. For the Browns, he says C+. Top needs entering the draft were running back, wide receiver, defensive tackle. the comment, there were several really good running backs and receivers available when the Browns drafted Michael Hall. Looking at this roster, I would have gone in a different direction. Scott, none of the wide receivers that were still on the board were, I mean, I liked some, but none of them were like, wow, he fell way below. It wasn't like McConkey was there or guys like that. Keon Coleman.
Yeah, I like Leggett, if that's how you pronounce it, from South Carolina. He was interested me. I mean, I like Corley, and he was still there. Troy Franklin fell way farther than I thought. And he was there. If they would have taken one of those guys at 54, I would have argued with that. Where I will differ with Mel a little bit is, it's easy, and we all do it, right? You talk about needs, and you had to address the need with the draft. Andrew Berry keeps saying it every time we talk to him, that it's about more than right now, right? So needs change. Guys get hurt, depth changes, right? So I think there is a danger to just saying, okay, they needed a running back, they didn't take a running back, especially when you're not drafted until 54. So, I thought the Browns had like a boring draft. I would probably give them a B-, C+ right in there. But I think it's not for the same reasons. It's just for the fact that they didn't have a first-round pick, and they probably didn't draft. Right now, it doesn't look like they drafted any immediate difference makers, and I'm not sure that's their fault. It's just the way things set up.
Yeah, and you had the wide receivers kind of go earlier in the second round. Some of the big name ones. End of the first round was where Leggett went. The Panthers traded in to get the fifth-year option. That's why you trade up a spot to get that. But so with that lens, though, take a look at this about Michael Hall. Defensive tackle prospects at 12% career pressure rate generated. This is via Pro Football Focus from Pro Football Insights. So Michael Hall, 12.7. Byron Murphy was a first-round pick, 12.5. Brandon Dorless, who played some edge, 12.3. Put it in broader context, the only round 2 or 1 defensive tackles since 2016 with higher pressure rates, Quinnen Williams, 15.1, Jonathan Allen, 14.3, Christian Barrymore, 14.0, Chris Jones, 13.8, Vita Vea, 13.3, Dexter Lawrence, 12.9, and Cansey, 13.2. So you look at it in that perspective, Michael Hall's pretty darn elite getting pressure from the defensive tackle position.
Yeah, which is why the Browns really coveted him, right? Not only him, but that skill set. They talked about it over and over. And it's interesting because you look at Hall, and there's not a ton of production, right? I think he had 2 sacks last year, maybe 2 tackles for loss. Like, there just wasn't a lot of production. But when you go to watch some of his highlights, he's in the backfield. You see that quickness, that explosion, the swim moves to get in the backfield. It looks like he plays with the high motor. At least it's a highlight tape, right? But it looks like there's a lot of energy there. So it doesn't always translate into sacks. We talked about that a billion times. I think the Browns are betting on the potential that, yes, this guy can be a disruptor. He can affect things in the middle of that line. You put him with Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith and Dalvin Tomlinson and Al Trade, whoever it is, Obo Okoronkwo, like you put that mix together, and he can fit and he can have an impact from the inside.
And the other thing is young. He is one of the younger defensive tackle prospects. So he's a little undersized right now. Doesn't mean he will be in a year or two.
Yeah, and I don't think you need to be 320 anymore, right? If he went from 290 at the combine. I think it's 299 at his pro day. If you settle in at 305, I think you can make it work. And the young thing is interesting. We talked all the time in the past. That's the kind of guys the Browns went after, right? David Njoku is a prime example. There weren't a ton of those guys in this draft. This was an old draft, and the Browns got one of the younger guys.
All right, another guy that the Browns got day 3, Jamari Thrash, wide receiver. He was asked about joining a wide receiver room headed by Amari Cooper and fighting through injuries last year.
Man, I can't wait. Mark Cooper doing a good job. He's always been consistent. He was one of my favorite receivers when he was at Bama as well. So just being in that room with him and Judy and Elijah Moore, just being in the room with those guys, I know I can just learn a lot. I can't wait. I can't wait to, get into that room with those guys.
Hey, Jamari, I saw that you had a hand injury, had surgery, you played through it. How did that affect you in the second half of the season? And, why was it so important for you to stay on the field?
It kind of slowed me up. Trying to get back used to, catching with, I don't want to say one hand, but trying to get strength back in, the hand I had surgery in. It definitely, slowed me down a little bit toward the second half of the season. But I always just wanted, so just knowing what we had to do and seeing where we at in the standings, I know that, going to the ACC championship was something that was big on us, coming in next January, coming in next January. So that's something that was big for us. And I just know the type of player I am and the type of teammate that I am. So I didn't mind, playing, with a broke hand or a broken wrist or a broken finger. Like, just knowing me as a player and just knowing that my team needs me on the field each game really just did a lot to me. So just knowing that they needed me, I don't mind going all out for my teammates.
Scott, broken hand's a tough one for a wide receiver. I mean, that will affect your ability to catch at the point of contact, and that's one of the knocks. Really good speed, point of contact, and I mean, those are things as you get older and you get stronger can improve.
Yeah, and the Browns like the fact that he can separate now, and they kept saying it over and over. And you watch the highlights of him, and he does. And Steve Smith Sr., he talked about him in his podcast, YouTube show before the draft. Really liked him. Showed a bunch of film. Really good route runner, and I think that fits with Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore. The question is, then, can you separate at the next level, right? He showed he could go from Georgia State to Louisville and still do it, still separate, still be productive. Now you have to make the next jump without crazy speed. I think he's a 4.46 guy, so it's good speed, but it's not crazy speed. Can he still do it at that level? He's not the thickest guy in the world. But there's things to like about his game. He seems pretty fluid to me, and it didn't look like he's got, like, clanker hands, right? Maybe there's some concentration issues, but he seemed pretty fluid, even with his hands in the tape that I watched.
Yeah, the other thing that kind of sticks out is everybody talks about, when I was younger, I was watching Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper's got to get sick of hearing about that. He's like, man, I've only been doing this like 8-9 years.
No, that's funny. You're right. I mean, all the guys, right? Elijah Moore, Jerry Jeudy. But when you consider yourself and other people consider you the best or one of the best route runners, I guess people are going to look up to you.
All right, this from CBS Sports. Post-NFL draft cut candidates. They say Miles Sanders, running back from the Panthers. Sanders signed a 4-year, $25.4 million deal with Panthers offseason. Largely a disappointment. Lost his starting job to Chuba Hubbard after just 5 games. And now they drafted Jonathan Brooks, so it'll be interesting. They say Trent Brown of the Bengals signed Brown to a 1-year deal earlier to add some depth along the offensive line. Was initially looked at as a starter. They drafted Mims in the first round, so it'll be interesting to see. Kadarius Toney with Xavier Worthy and Marquise Brown being added this offseason. Would seem like Toney could be squeezed out of that role entering the final year of his rookie deal. Chiefs would only endure $2.5 million dead cap by releasing him. If any of those guys are cut, do you think Andrew Berry and the Browns have an interest in any of them?
I think it's about timing, right? Like right now, I would say no. I think if you have an injury to somebody, right? We mentioned maybe Conklin doesn't come back like you'd hope. Then you're looking for tackle depth, and Trent Brown would make some sense, if the Bengals do cut him. I think we need to know more about Nick Chubb, right? That's a big question mark. You look at that running back room. Okay, could you just go Jerome Ford, Dante Foreman, and Nakeem Hines and Pierre Strong? Like that might be enough, right? I feel like maybe you want to add one to the mix just to see, get here in training camp. But if you add Nick Chubb to that group, and Nick Chubb is anywhere close to being Nick Chubb, then you're loaded. So I don't think they're in a rush to make a move at any of those spots, but I certainly think they'll be monitoring all 3 of those.
Yeah, the one thing, it seems like every year, if you need a running back, guys find them even when training camp starts, it seems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Kareem Hunt was out there in week 3 last year, right? So I think you're right. There's veteran guys that teams think are too expensive, and they want to go younger, and you can get that guy later. I completely agree at running back. I don't think there's a rush Now, if you want to add, like we talked about, undrafted rookies to the mix and see what they look like in the offseason, even training camp, that's fine. I don't think there's another move out there to be made right now, assuming they're still optimistic about Nick Chubb. And when you talk about receiver, people keep coming back to receiver, and I get it, it's important. But the Browns have their top 3 guys. I think they want to see Cedric Tillman. They just drafted Thrash. Like, Tony feels like he wouldn't fit to that next mix, right? If you're looking to add a guy, you're probably looking to add a 5th receiver to compete, and I don't think that's where Tony would fit.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. Scott Petrak, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Scott.
Thanks, Dave.
Scott Petrak, make sure you check him out. Brownzone.com on the internet. He is the Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle Telegram. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Play Maximum Millions and $2 million Ultimate Cash from the Ohio Lottery, and you may never look at scratch-offs the same way again.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's welcome Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Jeff, from the beginning of the time we started talking about the NFL draft, Michael Hall was a guy you thought was pretty much a perfect fit for the Browns. Why? What made you think that this was the guy that 54 would be a good pick or the pick, if you will?
They just really, really fell in love with the athleticism, the pass rushing ability. And you looked at this class and you look at the defensive tackle class, and it was kind of a dry class. There wasn't really a lot of really good players. A lot of guys went ahead of Michael Hall that probably shouldn't have. Michael Hall will not be 21 years old until June. So to be able to be this disruptive as a pass rusher at this early of an age, you know that is going to be a skill set that's going to improve for this young man, especially when he gets paired with a guy like Jim Schwartz, when he gets into a defensive tackle room with guys like Maurice Hurst, Shelby Harris, Quentin Jefferson. All of these guys know how to rush the passer from the interior. So the young man comes in a great situation where he can just pick the brains, and with his own God-given natural ability, now he's going to start to get some knowledge to go along with it too. A lot of people, want to critique the pick in some way. He showed up at his pro day at 299. Eventually Mike Hall is going to be a defensive tackle that probably plays in the NFL a little bit north of 300 pounds. He's going to get some money. He's going to put on some good muscle. He's going to start eating better. And the thing's going to be is whether or not he can translate the success he has as a pass rusher into being that successful as far as a run defender as well. There's no reason to believe between work, the athleticism, the strength, the hand technique he has, that he can't graduate to being that type of player. But the Browns needed future in the defensive tackle room. 29, 30, 31, and 32, the top four defensive tackles in that room right now. and most of them don't really have much left on their contract. So they could all possibly be gone next season if that's the way the Browns wanted it to work out. They needed that room to get younger. They needed a little bit more athleticism, and they certainly needed some staying power in Michael Hall Jr. Even though I wavered in my final mock draft away from it, Michael Hall Jr. was the perfect pick for them.
All right. So the wide receiver that the Browns got day 3 ended up being Jamari Thrash from Louisville. Andrew Berry explained what the Browns saw and liked in Thrash.
So, Jamari, we liked his route skill and his separation ability. This was a guy that both was very productive at Georgia State, and then transferring up to Louisville, really answered the bell there, and then really even through the Senior Bowl in January. We view him as a guy who can play outside and inside. He's good with the ball in his hands. So as we think through our offense and our fit within that receiver room, we're looking forward to seeing him compete for reps, and we think he's a guy that has position flex.
And so, Jeff, when you look at it, day 3 pick. I mean, they like what they saw. They value the one thing that tells me they really value route running.
Well, there's no question. And when you see the success a guy like Amari Cooper has, that was one of the reasons that drew them to Elijah Moore. It's one of the reasons that drew them to Jerry Jeudy. I think we all walked out of Thursday night round 1, and everybody's whistle was kind of getting wet. Man, would the Browns have a shot? And then right off the bat, Keon Coleman went, then Ladd McConkey went, and then reality set in that even though some of these guys didn't go Thursday night, they went right off the board Friday night. The Browns got to 54. There was obviously not a receiver there they liked. Got to 85, and by that time, the offensive tackle and the wide receiver room was pretty much dry. And even with that, and we talked about 71 pick gap between 85 and 156, the Browns, they know what the roster looks like for this year, but they always like to have that flexibility going into each year. They got 8 picks already on the board for next year's draft. They had an opportunity, if they wanted to trade up once. That's probably all they could have done in this draft if they wanted to. They chose to stay pat. Thrash is interesting because I do like this better than what they did the last couple of years, bringing in a Marquise Goodwin at his age and hoping that that guy can fill that role. Because, one little thing goes wrong and Goodwin missed a lot of time, you never really get him antiquated into the offense. Thrash will be here, should be here for 4 years. Even if it doesn't work right away, he could be a guy at 2025 that could be, start to compete for, reps and receptions when maybe Amari Cooper might not be here. Maybe Elijah Moore might not be here. Not saying that's going to be the way it is, but it could possibly turn out that way. But, ran well. And I think the jump for him from Georgia State to Louisville, and then the production was still pretty close to matching it. That was a really smart move, obviously, for Jamari Thrash. Went to the Senior Bowl, showed well. Did have some issues with drops last year, but from Dane Brugler's, the beast, he obviously played part of the season last year with a broken hand. Does have small hands in general at less than 9 inches, which isn't usually ideal for a wide receiver, but it's not something that truly affected him in his career. This is a guy that's going to find open space. So you don't have to worry about the small hands so much because it's not like they're going to be these big contested catches where he's got to take a hit from a 220-pound safety. Just like Andrew Berry said, he runs good routes, he creates separation, and the one thing the Cleveland Browns do like is he can play the X, he can play the Y, he can play the slot. That's what the Browns like. They don't want to have a tell. They want to be able to just go with guys in multiple formations, lining up in different spots. That is one of the things they love, which creates a lot of diversity for them. Everybody's always critiqued them for years for not being a big motion team. But one way they counteract that is the fact that they will line guys up anywhere. Njoku will end up wide, in line, slot. They'll do this with anybody. We saw Jerome Ford do it last year, wind up wide several times. They like that diversity look. And the reason they don't do as much motion, I think, is they like to have the quarterback know exactly what his read, the speed of his reads should be before the play goes.
All right. So this is from ESPN.com. Post-NFL draft questions for all 32 teams. For the Browns, do they have enough offensive playmakers? Cleveland used only a day 3 pick on a skill position player, Jamari Thrash. Despite Amari Cooper turning 30 before the season starts, Nick Chubb rehabbing a pair of knee surgeries, Andrew Berry noted that the Browns have had success finding contributors after the draft, but the offense looks like a unit banking on continuity and the emergence of newly acquired receiver Jerry Jeudy. I guess the question about playmakers is fair. I mean, Cooper's 30. I hadn't played like it. That would be my response. Amari Cooper hadn't played like he's 30.
I don't even know if I'm worried about the playmakers right here. Look, we all know, and we knew going into this offseason, and we know when we go into camp, and we know into the regular season. It's not a question about anybody else on that offense. Are they really going to get the Deshaun Watson that they paid for? Deshaun has obviously been a very difficult, tough year, 2 years here, missed a lot of time, dinged up a lot. And, there's a certain part of this fan base that never wanted him here. And now, they're kind of just basically waiting for him to hopefully hop out of town. I am of the belief, and I said it many times, I thought Deshaun Watson was playing pretty good football. And I think he was gradually finding his way and getting comfortable with the talent around him. But he's got Amari Cooper, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Jerry Jeudy, had almost 900 yards last year. Elijah Moore. David Njoku had almost 900 yards. If you have questions about the running back room, I think that is fair. But I do think, and maybe it's me hoping, but I do think the fact that they didn't spend one draft pick on a running back maybe tells me that Nick Chubb's rehab is probably going either as good as expected or maybe a little bit better than expected. That is certainly something they could have addressed with either 54 or 85 and really gotten, a running back to impact. I'm not concerned about the playmakers. I think they just need to get the best out of Deshaun Watson, and I think that they're finally going to get the return of that investment here in 2024. I think 4 is going to play out really, really well.
So this is from Football Insights, and it's really interesting. College wide receivers with 2.5 plus yards per route run, less than 50% of the targets over the middle from the last 2 drafts, 30-plus games. It's a pretty good list to be on for Jamari Thrash. Puka Nacua, Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Ndunzie, and Javon Baker, and the Browns pick Jamari Thrash. So that's a pretty good list to be on if you're Jamari Thrash.
Well, I mean, you certainly look at that, and I even think Jamari Thrash himself would be like, "Wow, all right, well, that's some nice company." But it was for the last 2 years, it was over 120 receptions. It was 2,000 yards. I think it was like 6.5 touchdowns per season. Went to the Senior Bowl, showed well. But the thing I like also is, in the running after the catch ability with Andrew Berry mentioned, he gets the ball and it's just one gear. And it's not like he's got to find an angle and then kick it up a notch. Certainly something that should be, the case when you're talking about a player who's, maybe not as big as some of the 6'3" wide receivers, but he is just 1 year and go. And that's really, really, really impressive. And the thing I do like is he comes in here with no pressure. We always talk about the one Browns drafted wide receiver who actually did pretty well and probably exceeded the expectations during the Andrew Berry regime was Donovan Peoples-Jones, because he came in as a 6th-round pick. There wasn't a lot on the plate. Nobody was just really it was just, a gradual progression, and a kid slowly started to find his way and then turned out to be a pretty good producer for them. This is the same thing for Thrash. There's not much pressure on him. Any good he does early is obviously going to be a positive, and then is maybe just going to kind of, set the stage for him to maybe get more meaningful time. But it was a nice situation. Granted, it was, everybody, it was such a great wide receiver class. But you know what? We're going to start doing this again in November because we do it every year. We fall in love with the wide receiver class because these kids are catching 100 passes a season in high school. It is just a more technically advanced position than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. These kids are just so much further along now at the wide receiver position than I have ever seen, and we'll find a whole new bunch to fall in love with next year.
Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. We continue talking Browns. Stay with us on Sports4CLE.
Play Maximum Millions and $2 Million Ultimate Cash from the Ohio Lottery, and you may never look at scratch-offs the same way again.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. This from Sports Illustrated. 4 burning questions for the Browns after the NFL draft. Number 1, which pick has the best chance of making an immediate impact in 2024? Number 2, how does Jamari Thrash impact wide receiver depth chart? Number 3, the Browns didn't address tight end in the draft. Is it still something they could look to do before the start of the season? And number 4, this is the first draft. Barry didn't trade up or down. Does that represent a change in philosophy from him? Jeff, let's start with 4. I think every draft is different, and he didn't have the ammunition to move up and down.
It was 71 picks from 85 to 156. And look, you hate to be that guy that says, oh, well, Jerry Jeudy technically is part of this draft class. But you only had the 6 picks. And I think, they were going to be a victim of the way the runs work. The wide receiver run started right at the top of round 2. And then all of a sudden, after the Browns took Michael Hall, there started the runs of all the offensive tackles. And, the well was pretty much dry of guys that you thought could be contributors right away, not necessarily that the Browns needed one. Those guys were pretty much gone by the time you got to 85. I mean, we all talked about, the kid from Notre Dame, Blake Fisher, or the other Washington tackle, Roger Rosengarten, both gone. Even Kieran Amageji, the kid we all loved out of Yale, I think he went at like 64, and that was 20 picks away. That would have cost the Browns, I don't even know if they would have been able to go from 85 to 64 with what they had left without giving up a 2025 pick, and he certainly wasn't going to do that. But I think, like you said, it's, everybody, you can't just think that it's always going to be the same thing every single year. They haven't had a first-round pick in years, and you know what? It hasn't really affected them because they've put themselves in the position to go into each and every draft when they haven't had a first-round pick saying, we can't count on drafting starters if we're starting our draft in the 50s. And true to his word, he was able to get all those needs addressed, so we didn't have to go in there and trade up and risk future assets, or even trying to grab a kid and put him in an unenviable position of coming in to a veteran team that they expect to make the playoffs, that they expect to compete in the playoffs, and looking at this rookie and saying, you got to go in there, you got to be the starter, we need you right away from day one.
Tight end, do you think they need something? I think they need more, but I don't know.
If now you keep in mind last year, there were 2 significant moves the Cleveland Browns made after the draft. Certainly one of them was Darius Smith. One of them a little bit later, actually, well, technically 2, Shelby Harris, Rodney McLeod. Can we find some way? Is the 31 other teams in the NFL, is somebody got a tight end that they are possibly, maybe looking to move? Because I think the Browns certainly would be interested. The Browns did bring in a undrafted free agent tight end at Wyoming. I was actually talking with his agent yesterday. And I was like, this must have been a slam dunk for you guys. He's like, yeah, we had several offers. He's like, but we kind of looked at the Browns depth chart at the tight end spot and said, look, this looks like a roster, that as long as he goes in and he performs and, like he thinks he's capable of, he should be able to be that rare UDFA that's going to come right in, make the roster, and possibly, get reps right out of the gate. It's not obvious. I mean, I'm sorry, it's pretty obvious. It's not hiding to anybody. I mean, David Njoku was a fantastic tight end last year. But, I mean, that room after David Njoku right now it's a big, big issue. I thought Ben Sinnott would be the tight end that they would want. Unfortunately, Ben Sinnott went 53rd to the Washington Commanders.
Who do you think? I'm guessing Hall is the rookie you think that has the ability to make an impact?
Well, you look at it that way for me, because the other thing is something bad would happen if it most likely was going to be someone else like Zach Zinter or Jamari Thrash. Something bad probably would have happened if one of those guys. Look, Michael Hall can come in. It's a small role, but to think Michael Hall can come in and maybe get you 3, 4, 5 sacks, these defensive linemen are going to get a lot of reps. If the Browns are winning games like everybody expects them to, the middle linebacker comes off the field, and then next Jordan Hicks is going to come off the field, and it's going to be DBs, JOK, and it's going to be pass rushers, and they're just going to go, and Schwartz is going to put them out there sometimes for maybe 2 reps, maybe 3 reps, and then you know what? There's no reason for you to take a 4th rep. Even if you're not that tired, I'll get you 100% almost as every rep as I possibly can, because I have the depth to do so. So, but yeah, you would think it's probably most likely Michael Hall. And the thing would be is if he goes out there and gets a little success early, look, like I said, they're not married to the rest of that room technically long term. So if Mike Hall hits the ground running, they're going to have no problem saying, well, let's see what the kid's got and, give him some more reps.
What did you think of the Zach Zinter thing? I liked it. I think if he doesn't break his leg, I don't think there's any way he's around at that pick.
It kind of worked out. And remember, we talked about this when they signed Jermaine Afidi. I said, is this going to be something now where maybe they would have a little more interest in guard as opposed to tackle? We all thought tackle was going to be the way, but you signed a veteran offensive tackle. Zinter, though, came from the Michigan program. And one thing you like is a winning program. Obviously, had a quality career while he was there. Did get hurt, unfortunately, in the Ohio State game. And unfortunately enough, the coincidence that it was Michael Hall. Probably a great way to, say hello to your new coworker for the next 4 years. But Zinter comes in here, and look, we know where Joel is at age-wise. Wyatt is obviously younger, but Wyatt makes a lot of money. Certainly, when Wyatt Teller is at his best, he is worth every dime that that he's getting paid. But you have to look and to think that we've gone 4 years with this guard tandem, which is now going to be 5 years. To think that maybe be 6, you got to think it's probably not going to happen for one reason or the other that we just don't know yet. So you get Zinter in here, he gets to work right away, and it isn't a bad probably thing for Zach Zinter to go to work every day and learn from a possible, most likely left guard who's going to go to the Hall of Fame, and Wyatt Teller, who went from a guy who was a former 6th round pick, put his nose to the ground, worked his butt off, got bigger, faster, stronger, did everything he possibly could, and took himself from a day 3 pick to a Pro Bowl player who makes $12 to $13 million a year. It's a great situation for Zinter to be in.
Jeff Lloyd, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jeff.
All the best, Dave. Time to rest for a little bit.
All right, sounds good. Make sure you check him out. Jeff Lloyd, Locked On Browns podcast, always really good Brown stuff. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.